Hey everybody, it's George Bueller, your Prime Fanatic from the Fanatic Forum, and we are here today with our another panel here with a great multiverse fundraiser here, talking with indie comic creators here. But of course, before we get things going here, we've got to discuss why we are here, and this is all for comic books for kids. We'll be right back in a second.
And this is what we do. We do this every day. On Christmas Day, I was getting emails from hospitals. On Christmas Day, I was responding. Sickness doesn't take a break. We are there for the hospitals. We are there for the kids. We will do whatever we can do. And as I look and talk to you, and I talk to all the people who are watching this, be a part of this. However you want to be a part of this, be a part of it. If you can send us $5, send us $5. Send us 5 comic books, a Funko Pop, a toy, a children's book, send it to us. However you want to make a difference, because we're all in this together. And here's the cool news. Nobody knows who I am, and here's why. When we give these materials to the hospitals give it to the kids and the parents. Comic book for kids and my name never shows up. When this stuff goes to the military, when my comic shops send the pallets, my name is never there. And that's great. That's all right. Because it's not, as I said, about us. It's not about promoting who we are. It's about all of us together in the industry making a difference for so many. And that's what we're about, Kelly. And that's what we do every single day of the year.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So if you can, certainly give to Comic Books for Kids, cb4k.org. That's the reason why we're here this weekend. They're a fantastic charity. Mark does a lot of great work, and it's a grassroots charity, which makes it, even all the better there. So as you see the scroll there at the bottom of your screen there of how you can donate, give as much as you can. It doesn't matter, folks. They all love it. So everybody absolutely love the support. And since we're talking about support here and creating great things here, we are talking about indie comic creators here. It's an amazing age that we are in, that basically anybody who has the talent and the drive and the know-how to want to create a comic book can with today's technology. You don't have to sit in the bullpen anymore. You can do it wherever you want. And so we have got a great panel of folks here who've created their own books, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about here. So first and foremost, let's start bringing them out here. First off, we've got Grant Lankard here. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, Jeff Beinecke. Thank you for being on here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Timothy B. Fling. Hello, sir.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Brian Rodman. How you doing?
If I can get myself unmuted there. Hi, I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Good. I'm good, man. All right. Well, first off, we'll start with Grant here. Introduce yourself and what kind of all the different jobs you do on your specific creations here.
Yeah, my name is Grant Lankard. I guess I'll go first. I just did a 6-issue miniseries called Beowulf. Just completed the last issue, and that's going to be going out. Well, it's already started getting mailed. I also do a horror anthology called Memoirs of the Morbid, and my new comic book that is going to be out in mid-February is called League of Cryptids, and the concept behind that is what if the 5 most well-known cryptids are actually ancient aliens who are put here to protect the Earth.
Awesome. Here's an image here for your Beowulf comic, and we're going to try to get you. I'm trying to get your League of Cryptids up here as well here, but let's see here if I can save this one here. All right, that's not working for me right now. So, hang on here.
There we go.
Nice. There's League of Cryptids.
Dig that logo, man. That looks cool.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, this looks fun here. I love this. Frogs go to Loveland. I love it. This is awesome. Thank you, Grant. That's great. All right. So Next up here, Jeff Beinecke here. Let's bring up your art here for the Crag. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I'm actually not the artist. I am the writer and creator of the story. That's kind of my job, is just doing the character designing, scripting, all that stuff. Unfortunately, I can't draw. I wish I could, but so I'm do the writing. I did the Kickstarter, which it was last year, but I've had some health issues, so I'm just starting to get back into the groove of things. So I've got 3 more pages, I think, where we've got to illustrate for number 2, and then number 2 will be out of the Crag. That's kind of the main book I'm focusing on right now, just kind of doing 1 and seeing how that goes, and then hopefully, build off of the Crag and go from there. So that's my role, is just the kind of the creator, just pretty much everything but actually drawing it.
Nice.
And doing like the formatting and the imagery stuff.
Excellent. Timothy, next up, we've got some of your artwork here for Water Wars 2288. So what's your involvement in this book?
I'm the writer and publisher. I also do a fair amount of editing. I guess you'd say I'm the creator, but I always feel that term is a little bit too encompassing. I don't like to say only the writer, especially when I'm in a room with other writers. But I guess it is fair to say that. But over the course of it, I feel like I should mention that's now 18 artists have contributed to this series over a 4-year period. So it's,
wow.
I say that in the sense, I guess like all of us, we want it to sound like we're doing a little better than we are. But I feel like I definitely got to give a shout out to the team, because it's grown into something bigger than I ever thought it would be.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least here, Brian Rodman. I've got a couple of images for you here. So first off, we have Memoirs of an Angel, the Gray Pilgrim.
Yeah, so this Memoirs of an Angel actually started out as a comic book series, which is why we're all here. And right now we have 8 issues of that. I do all of the art, the writing, and the coloring, lettering, all that jazz. But by no means do I do this by myself. I have a handful of amazing ladies who are on the team, and they're anywhere from editing to helping me format. They're great group of creators. And now Jeff, because I also have had some really bad health issues that have popped up over the last year, and so we're pivoting from comics, from Memoirs of an Angel, from comics to kind of a hybrid of comics and prose. So it's not quite a prose novel, not quite a comic book. There's I guess you could call it an illustrated novel, but there's a lot more comic book flavor to it than a normal illustrated novel would be. So yeah, that's kind of my role in that series, and we do have 8 issues completed of the comic before we've made this pivot. So yeah.
Okay. And then I've got another image here for you for the Nebulizer character here of yours.
Yeah, so that is that story is actually really personal and just kind of hits it home for me, because my illness is a severe chronic asthma,
Okay.
and so that's what I've been dealing with really all my life. And so this story is all about this as severe asthmatic who's in this post-apocalyptic world filled with allergen mutants, and he and his AI controlled suit are fighting these monsters that plague all of us with asthma and allergies in physical monstrosity form. So it's a lot of fun, and this one is kid friendly. So so yeah, I'm really I love this series quite a bit.
That's awesome. Well, one thing I'm always intrigued about when it comes to writers, artists, any kind of creators is the creative process that you all go through. So starting with you, Jeff, what is your creative process? How do you come up with ideas when you've got that idea? How do you start fleshing out and making it a real thing?
Well, my creative process is really, it's really unorganized, I would say. Half the time I don't really know, where the ideas come from. A lot of the time, like for the Crag, it doesn't seem like it would fit with this, but I actually got the idea from Sasquatch, like, imagining Sasquatch watching out on society from the, the woods or jungle or whatever. And then I kind of put a golem in that position, then just, I just start with kind of like a very basic idea and just kind of plug things in. And yeah, it's very unorganized. A lot of it is, I feel like it's subconscious for me. Like I'll just write, and then a few days later, I'll say, well, that has more layers than I thought it was going to have. But as long as you come up with it. So yeah, nature is a big inspiration for me. Just watching, how animals, relate to each other, or society obviously is another big one. Just how humans interact. We're so unique. It's just I just draw inspiration really from everywhere as far as that goes. Music, movies, video games. But yeah, my process is really, it's kind of just depends. Every story's different for me. I'm kind of a wild guy in that regard. I don't take a lot of notes. I usually keep it in my head. I just jot down like a few main things, and then just kind of let things snowball and kick around, and then write a little bit, let it build up, sift through what's there, write it down, and just kind of work in phases really when I actually am doing the writing. So
I like it. It seems a very kind of relaxed method as well. There's not a lot of hurriedness to it. Basically, you're going at your own pace, and so I like that. Excellent. Well, Grant, since you've got more of the artistic hand here, sim question here: what is your process when it comes to your art?
Well, so first of all, I don't write out a script. I go straight into drawing because I've never understood how people who write out a script, how they figure out how many panels will fit on a page. You know what I mean? Because like sometimes you do a page that has like 3 panels and it looks crowded, but other times you do like a page that has like 9 panels and it doesn't look crowded. So I start out by drawing, and I'm strictly digital now. I can't even remember the last time I drew on a piece of paper, which I don't know. Maybe I should try that just so I stay in practice with that. But that's how I write the stories. And I think most writers will agree with me that the real work, when you really pull the story together, is in the rewriting. Because there's always a moment like when I write the first draft where I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like I can't publish this. Like, what is wrong with me? And then like by the third draft, it looks fine. As far as where I got my ideas from, with both Beowulf and League of Cryptids, it came from me looking at something that already existed and saying, that kind of sounds like it could be a comic book. Like with League of Cryptids, I remember I was looking at like a bunch of statistics for, different cryptids, like seeing like, this one is really strong. This one is psychic. This one is kind of like a brawler. And I remember thinking to myself, this looks like the old like Marvel trading cards that I had when I was a kid. And that's where the idea for League of Cryptids came from. And in same way with Beowulf. I remember when I was a kid, my parents had a Time Life fairy tale book, and one of the stories in it was Beowulf. And I remember reading that and thinking like, oh my God, this is just like a comic book, but it was written, 1,000 or even 2,000 years ago. So
yeah,
so
that's great.
Sorry, go ahead.
It always fascinated me with the Beowulf as well. That story was passed around, word of mouth until it was written down, probably hundreds of years later after it's been told and retold. So yeah. Interesting question. You brought up this, Grant, talking about your art. Just as a panel here, how many of y'all work from home when you're doing your art, or how?
I think probably.
Okay. Or Timothy, do you have like a professional office you're in?
I do not. Although I guess you'd say my basement is kind of a studio now. It's the It's funny. I was joking about it earlier. Like, we always want it to sound more important than it is. Like, hey, well, my studio is essentially a desk with a ping pong table next to it. And, we started with making one book, and then it was 2 books, and then it was 3. And now it's I think it's 11, 12, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little assembly line is what it is, which I use for Kickstarter fulfillment. As far as the writing process itself, I can do that pretty much anywhere, including I've done it at work and anywhere the inspiration strikes you, I guess is the way I would phrase that.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, as the other artist here, how do you work? Do you work digitally entirely with your art, or are you old school pen and paper?
I am entirely digital. I started off traditional. And in fact, I did the first 3 issues of Memoirs of an Angel, traditional black and white. And then my wife, mostly to cut costs of tools, like all the pens and all the pencils and everything like that, all the paper, we switched to digital, and I never looked back. It just, for me, like, I love and respect traditional medium. I think it's great. And if I had the means, and really, I think it's almost a completely different skill set. A lot of it crosses over, obviously, but it's just, I think with digital, for me at least, it gives a lot more freedom. I don't have to worry about messing up a page. If I have a wild idea, I can try it. If it doesn't work, I didn't mess anything up. I can push a button and it goes away. And that just, for me, provides the freedom that I never had before. So yeah, I'm all digital. And the process, I'm actually the opposite of Grant. I'm an artist, but I'm also a writer. I don't know what I am first. I know a lot of people who do both. They say I'm a writer first, I'm an artist first. I have no idea what I am. But I do start, usually it's either an image in my head that I draw, or it is something, that I'll type out, a poem or something like that. A lot of notes start off all my stories. I'm that crazy guy with the red twine on my Google Docs. It's but yeah, I do start off with the scripts first. So I write out, and because I'm the artist, I think it's a lot easier, right? Like, I'm writing for myself later, which also makes me, when I put my artist hat on, I always say, I hate the writer who made me do this. And but no, I will just kind of briefly describe what the panel is, what the illustration is. And then later, if it doesn't work, like Grant said, if it's too crowded or something like that, I can rework it, because I'm doing it all. It really does. Like, I'm thankful and blessed in that way. I'm just glad that I have that kind of freedom. And I do. A lot of people, they say, oh, well, it's all you're all doing it. I said it earlier. It's really not. The creative process, even though I am doing a lot of the work, I need a team. I need other people, at least to get fresh eyes on it, before, it goes to the printer or anything like that. And so I have an editor, I have all this stuff, and I bounce ideas off of my team all the time. And they're so good with the creative process. So yeah, I usually, it's kind of a weird ping pong effect of being a writer and an artist, and whatever creative fancy strikes me in the moment, that's the hat I put on.
Right on. We got to take a pause here, because we have got a lot of comments here from folks watching at home. So thank you all very much for tuning in here to the Multiverse Fundraiser, to our Indie Comic Creators panel here. Let's get some comments going up here real quick here. Let's see here. First off here, we got to have Molly Daniels coming in and says that she loves the Nebulizer Mouth Breathers Unite.
Thank you, Molly. Absolutely.
Let's see here. Hey, Carl Witzman saying, thank you very much, Carl. I appreciate it. Saying, nice from Georgia takeover so Crayle and Kelly can catch a break. Yes, those ladies have been working very hard this weekend. So thank you all very much for what you all do for this year. Let's see here. Hang on, good. Wow, there's a lot of comments here. This is awesome here. Clyde Hall saying, hello, creative forces of nature. Thank you, Clyde Hall. And we got Hollis Thompson coming in here asking where he can buy Beowulf comics. Also told Crayle there's only one manuscript copy of Beowulf, and she joked that maybe it was a story no one liked and one dude saved it for fun.
Yeah, I was trying to answer her question. I don't know if just putting the word Amazon in a comment is enough to get it blocked. But yeah, my comments failed to post. So I do have an Amazon page. If you just type out my name, and I'll spell it here for you. If you type out my name in Amazon, you should be able to find digital copies. But I have a Kickstarter coming up in mid-February, and if you're like me and you really want the print copies, I'm going to have those available as add-ons on my Kickstarter. It might also have been the word Kickstarter that got my comment banned.
God knows. Yeah, and Jeff, where could we find the Crag?
It is on Amazon also for Kindle. You can just search my name. Yeah, it's on there. So just, yeah, it's a tough one. It's not easy to spell, but yeah, you can search my name or I can post it here in the chat. I've got print copies. I'm caught up in this health stuff. I've been meaning to get an actual, real website up, which
Sure.
I've got the domain. We're just trying to get that still up. So once I get that up, I can, have print copies available, or just, reach out to me via Facebook or anywhere really, and I can set people up. So, but primarily right now, Amazon.
Okay. And then Timothy, where can we find Water Wars and other Earth Dog Studio books?
The easiest thing for me is, well, I'm a Kickstarter fella, so I'm just about always on there. But for all the published materials, that's through earthdogstudios.com. I have some stuff on Amazon, but I kind of prefer if they go through my website. So if viewers, if you don't mind, hit earthdogstudios.com. That's the best way to, in my case, to support me directly.
100%. Yeah. The large corporations are great, but if you can actually support the artist fully, do that.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And by the way, I'm not against any of those things. We all need to increase our reach. But when possible, viewers, please reach out to the creators directly. I think I speak for all of us when I say we all do a little better that way. Thank you, Cereal Box and Phoenix Sisters, for the link. I appreciate that.
Yeah, there we go. And then Brian, of course, you've got Memoirs of an Angel was available through Kickstarter. But where can we find this now?
Yes, so everything I've ever done, all 8 issues of Memoirs of an Angel and the first 2 issues of the Nebulizer, plus other books that I've been a part of, Pulp Reality, number 4 through Stormgate Press, and a few other anthologies, all on brianrodman.com. If you Google the name Brian Rodman, I'm at the top. Somehow I have clawed and fought my way and beat all the other Brian Rodmans out. And I am, there can be only one. So I'm at the top of the Google list. Just Google my name and it's right there. But yeah, you can find every comic, every book that I've ever done at the website.
Many Brians enter, only one Brian Rodman leave.
Exactly. And ironically, the asthmatic one. I have no idea.
All right. So definitely a question here for all the panel here. What genres do you all normally engage in, and what specifically drew you to those genres? Grant, we'll start with you first.
I would say probably the biggest one was fantasy. I would call Beowulf modern fantasy, and I would say League of, with maybe a little bit of superhero genre thrown in there. I would call League of Cryptids kind of the same, a modern fantasy. Like I said, they're ancient aliens, so maybe a little bit of sci-fi elements. But I grew up loving superheroes. I read. There was a time in my life where I tried to read Lord of the Rings about once a year. I don't do that anymore, but just because I'm too busy. But there's something about those books that just kind of feels like a warm blanket when you read them. I think it's the idea of living in a simpler time, without iPhones. But also, the added bonus of mixing in magic sword battles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I understand that. I think, speaking of Lord of the Rings stuff, I think Kelly may have mentioned this on one of the other panels. There's an audiobook form of Lord of the Rings that Andy Serkis reads.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
so
wonderful.
we listened to that one time. We actually listened to that when we were going to the Baltimore Comic-Con, and the problem with it is his voice when he's not doing the Gollum voice. His voice is like so soothing; it was like starting to put me to sleep while I was driving. But, yeah, I would recommend those as well, as long as you're not driving.
Absolutely. So, Brian, same question here. What genre do you normally dabble in, and what drew you to it?
I guess the thing that really crosses over in all my works is fantasy. I do tend to lean more heavily into the horror aspect of it, especially with Memoirs of an Angel. The tagline of it is it's like Lord of the Rings meets The Exorcist. So you get that high fantasy and the demonic kind of horror. But I'm sorry, what was the question again, George?
Oh, basically, what genre do you normally dabble in, and what drew you to it?
Right, and so with memoirs, my faith actually drew me to it. I'm a seminary nerd. I went to Bible college, all that jazz, and for a while I thought I was going into vocational ministry. Did not do that. I'm a comic creator, so you see how that worked out. But while I was in class, a lot of times, I'm learning theology, just hearing all this lore and things that I personally believe, but also just how it works, all that jazz, trying to wrestle with all that stuff. This story kind of formed. You could I've kept a lot of them. We're in the margins and things in the page. I've written down little story ideas that, I mean, this was 15 years ago that now it's coming to fruition in this way. And so that's what mainly inspired. And of course, like Grant said, I read Lord of the Rings. I'm a Middle Earth nut, so I love reading Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and all that stuff all year round. And so that's a huge influence. Brandon Sanderson novels, huge influence. And then of course, like I said, my faith as well. But with the nebulizer, my health, huge. Huge. I wrote it during the pandemic or the first issue, and I just wanted something fun for kids that struggled with the things that I struggled with as a kid. That just, it gives them an escape, much what this whole fundraiser is about. Right. So I wanted to create something that asthmatic kids could look to, have fun with, because it's a comedy first and foremost. It's a fun, silly book that has an outrageous premise. And it's it's got some darker tones. Obviously, there's a post-apocalyptic world, so there's a lot of monsters. Everything on the microscopic level turned into this monstrosity. So that's it. But everything else is fun and fantasy based. But yeah, the nebulizer is all about just giving kids and adults a hero that they can look up to and relate to, who struggles with the same things that they do.
Excellent. So, a new question here. We'll start with you, Jeff. Here, basically, any kind of creation you're going to do when it comes to comic books or any sort of form, you're going to deal with collaboration. You're going to have to deal with basically working with the right people, finding those right people. What has been your process with finding those people, and have you ever had any experience with someone that maybe didn't work out and had to kind of tool everything you were working on?
Yeah. For me, I have been extremely lucky. First off, let me say that to find the people that I've found to work with, especially the artist for the Crag, Janine Joni Keith. She's been really helpful in just helping me grow as a writer. She's just great. But so I found her just on a Facebook group. This was, a while back, but it seems like they're filled with scammers now and spam accounts and stuff. So it's hard to find. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's hard to find people that you, I guess, mix well with creatively. And once you find that, you kind of know it, and just everything, for me at least, it's become just easy to collaborate once you find that person that you mesh with. So yeah, it is very, you've got to work together. Communication is huge, like Grant was talking about, knowing how many panels on a page. Like, for instance, the artist, like if I put too many panels on a page, she can just adjust it and put like if I put 5, but there's only room for 4, take liberty to adjust it. I trust her, and that's fine. You gotta, if somebody else makes a change that's better, you gotta kind of put your ego aside sometimes and do what's best for the art. And that's something I struggled with. I'm 34. Like when I was 20, that's something I really struggled with when I was a lot younger, was just the ego part. Like, there's people that are better than you and know better, know what they're doing more than you. You're only 20. You haven't been through it yet. So yeah, I would say communication is the most important part for me. Just, getting your ideas across, and, being shy about maybe if you want something tweaked. That's something that I struggle with a little bit, just because I don't want to be confrontational, but that's part of it. Whatever is best for the art is kind of what you guys should all, the team, be working towards, I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of a thing too. I think a lot of people struggle with. You don't want to come off as being too, negative or too, critical or anything like that. You just want to make things work the best they are. And you should be able to trust the team you're working with, basically, be able to work through that. So, Jeff, I'm sorry, not Jeff, Timothy, of course, you basically running a studio here. You've definitely got a lot of collaborators you've worked with. Probably some people have come and gone. You've said, of course, with Water Wars, had so many, artists come through there. What's been your experience with collaboration with people?
Well, I tell you, Jeff made a really good point, and I just want to sort of touch on what he said, which is, just as 4 or 5 years ago, you could join various types of Facebook groups and try to find people that would sort of align with what you are making. And the first thing I would tell viewers today, you're going to want to be very cautious of that. And it's because of the reason that Jeff mentioned. It's a thing now where people put up art samples that they didn't make, or to say it's filled with scammers, I feel would be an understatement at this point. So it's definitely a thing. So proceed with caution and get references. In my case, what I did was, once you meet 1 or 2 people that you sort of know and trust, try and stick with references. Like, just for an example, like I know Grant and Marvin a little bit. So if they said, hey, well, I worked with this fella, he's trustworthy, I would be more inclined to go that route rather than try somebody new. Because I've had a few instances where it didn't quite go the way I wanted with someone new. And again, to sort of jump onto Jeff's reply, is particularly in the case of where, if you're the writer and creator, you got a little bit of a story you're trying to put across. And the first thing you want to make sure is that the artist has in fact read the whole script and has got the concept of what you're trying to convey, because they might draw something a little incorrect, or they might draw something that hasn't even happened yet. Like, hey, wait, that doesn't happen until page 7. Like, she doesn't know yet that this happened or that happened. So like, there's many angles to take into consideration for illustrators. And by the way, it's a super hard job as an illustrator of a comic script. Not taking anything away from that. It's particularly in a comic script, it might be the main thing. It might be more important than the writing in some parts. But in my case, many of the, if not all of the stories, they end on sort of a dramatic panel, or in many cases, a twist ending. So you can't show it on page 2 or page 3. It's got to happen. It's got to progress along. And just to finish the question, in my case, my inspirations were similar in the sense, I'm so pleased to see a bunch of Tolkien fans in this room. Congrats to you. I do the same thing Grant does. I try to read it once a year. I think it's one of the great works of literature. And of course, mentioning the Silmarillion. Wow. My hat's off to you.
I think I blame my Bible nerd stuff. That's how I can get through it.
Yeah. Many people say, you could, and not to, go completely off topic, but the beginning of the Silmarillion is in many ways biblical, right? It's
very similar.
So but once you get through that, it's some of the greatest dialogue that's ever been written, and highly recommend it. Yeah. But so I, in short, I'm the sci-fi guy. My influences would be Richard Matheson, Isaac Asimov, Harlan Ellison. If you like those, you'll like what I'm doing over here.
Yeah. I grew up on a healthy dose of Richard Matheson. Love
he's
that stuff.
one of the greatest, man. One of the greatest. And it's funny, like we kind of forget now who he is. Like you see the Will Smith movie, I Am Legend, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody knows Will Smith. How many people would say, "Hey, that's Richard Matheson"?
Yeah,
Right.
If you guys
And that-
like, if the people listening like Stephen King, I think Stephen King got a lot from Richard Matheson.
Oh, sure.
Oh yes,
So,
very much so.
Yeah,
He would admit that. Yes.
Totally agree.
Well, of course, in this world of social media and the digital world here, it's a very crowded market, especially nowadays for indie creators here. So, start with you, Grant. How do you promote your books and market them and try to break through?
I feel like a lot of people would say probably not very well. I mean, I think with everybody, marketing is like the Brussels sprouts of the comic book creating, right?
That's great.
Like sitting there writing and drawing it is like the steak and maybe the potatoes, and then marketing is like the Brussels sprouts. Really, I mean, you just I mean, I pencil in like an hour every day where I just go around and I say to myself, okay, I'm gonna post screenshots of the comic book here, and here. Messaging old people who have backed your Kickstarter in the past. Sending out newsletters. It can real. I can see why, like for like new comic book creators, why it would be overwhelming because there's so many different outlets to promote your comic book on. I mean, and even though I hate Twitter, like 2 or 3 times a month, I'll go on Twitter and just post the link just in case, there's like, even though like I don't really talk much on Kickstarter, there might be 1 or 2 people who follow my tweets. I mean, 1 or 2 people is more than none, right?
Right.
Yeah, very true. Carl Witzman makes a great point here. It says he told a new writer that you get an editor in order to sell your next work. If your early works have numerous errors, you won't sell stuff in the future.
Yep.
Very true. You always definitely want to put your best foot forward anytime you're putting your stuff out there. I mean, I've been an ear for a lot of different writers and whatever else. Like, here, read this, tell me what you think, and then basically, they're not publishing it. They're passing it to a friend and getting an opinion, sort of thing. So, but yeah, I would definitely agree with that, Carl. Jeff, what about you? How do you do marketing and promotion for your own work?
Well, that's kind of the the hard part. It's I'm kind of just stumbling through it right now. This is the first really exposure I've ever had outside of just basic Facebook, Instagram, a little bit of Twitter posts with screenshot of the artwork, a little caption. For me, I don't. If any of you guys think I'm doing it in the reverse order, please tell me because I'm kind of lost on the marketing thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing really small, like just little card shows at like moose lodges and try to build up from like ground zero locally, and then maybe I don't know. It's because the exposure with just having a social media account for me has not been easy. I've got a couple followers, which like Grant said, 1 is amazing, let alone, you're trying to get as many as you can though. But so for me, I'm kind of starting over and just going to do locally on top of the social media stuff, maybe because I've got like a flyer with the QR codes, put that on the table and people buy comics, maybe start building up a little bit, then hopefully word of mouth and, see what happens. I always try to remind myself that, when I start feeling down about marketing and exposure, that the Ninja Turtles are actually still a thing. And that happened. If the Ninja Turtles can catch on and take over the world, you never know what could happen. So just always keep plugging away, and, you never know when your lucky break is going to come. So, network and social media, local shows, got to do it all. It feels like, to me at least. So that's what I'm going to.
I think that's a good strategy. Like, I don't recommend really young comic book creators doing like the big comic conventions, because what you're going to find is you're going to get lost in the mix.
Mhm.
Like, the people who go to the big conventions are there to meet William Shatner or Dean Cain or whoever. They're not there to buy I mean, there are a few, but generally speaking, it's the smaller shows where you're gonna find like a guy who's been collecting comic books for 40 years and is excited about your comic book.
Yeah, I've got a guy that really he wants to actually do some art, like a cover, and he's been a long time collector, and he actually lives like one town over. So that's kind of what inspired me to do the start local and do a kind of a grassroots thing and try to go up from there. So.
Absolutely. Timothy, what about you? Have you had any challenges with marketing or with promotion or just getting the word out about your works?
Yes, in short. And first, thanks so much for asking me this question. So I'm going to try to focus in like a laser in the hopes that it might be helpful to some of us in this group. One of the things that I've noticed, and by the way, Grant is 100% right in what he said, and I'm going to approach it like this. Social media has changed a lot in the last 4 to 5 years. And what you're going to find, and by the way, I'm guilty of this, so please don't hear that I'm disparaging someone. We all tend to do the same things, right? I call it spamming the link graveyard. Here's my link. Here's my link. Buy my stuff. Buy my stuff. And Crayle knows this. I got a little bit of a marketing background. And the truth is, we want people to notice our stuff, but we're taking exactly the wrong steps to do it. Here's what I mean by that. When we drop these links into groups, there isn't any engagement for these links. There isn't any reason for the person to follow you. So the first tip that I would give for free is jump out of the comic book creator groups. Man, we all love each other. You guys are great, but we're not customers at the end of the day. So in the fantasy guys, I'm going to just pick Grant and, for an example, hey, the Lord of the Rings groups or the fantasy groups or the cryptid groups, right? Which are the ones that I'm in. I got a cryptid group too. And just share art samples. That's step one. Step two, tell them a little bit about yourself. Here's who I am. This is what I'm doing. Here's who did the artwork. Maybe a little blurb about who the artist was. People like to see who made things, right? In other words, the best way to sell something is not necessarily to tell them to buy it, if you follow what I mean. All of us have a little bit of resistance toward advertising, or at least I do. And, I don't engage with any of those, so why would we think somebody else would? The third type is exactly what we're doing right now, is to appear on podcasts and try in some way to be interesting to a group. And in my case, what I sometimes try to do is try and help somebody else. And even if you don't necessarily do it very well, I'm not claiming I do it very well, but I have a small podcast that I do on Friday nights, and people will relate to seeing you try to help someone. And we share tips about marketing and social media and all this kind of thing. And while we're on the subject, you guys are all invited. I'll be seeing Grant pretty soon anyway. But this is the type of thing, in my opinion, that builds an audience. If you build the audience, they'll show up when you launch your Kickstarter. They'll say something like, hey, there's Brian. I liked him when he was on the blah, blah, blah. And they'll give it a shot. Whereas if you're like most creators, and again, I don't mean this in an insulting way, it's that they do it out of not being sure what to do. That here's the link. Go buy my book. Go support my book. Here's the link. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And as a matter of fact, the algorithm does not reward that type of behavior. And soon you'll be pretty frustrated because you won't get much engagement on those posts.
Absolutely. And then Carl Witzman also mirrors your point here about being on online programs and fundraisers and stuff like this. Definitely also helps in marketing.
Right.
So, Brian, same question here. What has been your challenges? What has been your successes with marketing for your own products?
Sure. Well, I felt like a bobblehead while Tim was talking. I agree with pretty much everything you've said. I would actually add one thing that I don't think has been mentioned, is pointing people or directing people from social media to your domain that you own. I think that is crucial because what that does, it's a little pocket of marketing, because all the other stuff that Tim and Grant and Jeff have addressed are all important. But I also think cultivating that kind of, I hate to use this term because I think it's abused, but community aspect to your fan base, to people that like your stuff. And I think it takes some time. So, you're not going to see, 1,000 people show up overnight. But while you're going to shows, while you're promoting online on social media, always point people to your website. I do a monthly newsletter every month, just once. I don't spam anybody. I open it up. I talk about whatever's on my mind, and then I update everybody with, what I've been doing, what I'm into, all that kind of stuff. And that is growing. It's been growing over the course of, 8 years. And so now I have an instant access to all my people who have shown up, and hundreds of people that are subscribed to my newsletter. I can just send out an email if I have a Kickstarter coming up. I don't have to wrestle with the algorithm. I have that instant access to people. And so instead of wrestling with all the things happening on social media, all I have to get you to do is click an email and read. And that's proven for me to be very helpful. I think a lot of that is also, and again, I hate using this phrase, but it's essentially what you're doing is selling yourself. Is you are not just selling a product, you are really, people buy from creators that they know and they like, and not that you should like try to be something you're not. And that's not what I'm getting at, but get out there and engage with people, talk to people, and really invest in the people that are going to read your books, and that you like to talk to, make friends. I mean, this is a great experience if you can do that kind of stuff, and you can really get to know your readers. I mean, I know a lot of people that started out as my readers, and now they're really good friends of mine. And I love that, and that, I think, for me, is what it's about. I would much rather have people that I know and care about in enjoying what I have to offer them than just a bunch of strangers. And even though the strangers are obviously important,
Sure, yeah.
I think this aspect is a part of marketing that doesn't get a whole lot of highlights a lot of times. And I think it's beneficial for the reader and the author artist.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is a lot about building community here. So absolutely. And kind of speaking about building community here, of course, there's always, when you're trying to do your own work, the financial considerations of how to get it out there. Kickstarter, of course, has been mentioned numerous times here on the panel here. Has there been any other ways that you all have found success in with basically any kind of, self-funding with things here? Or have you had any kind of sponsorships or even grants or anything like that?
No, not really.
Go ahead, Grant.
Sorry. I mean, I go around to local comic book shops and ask if they want to buy a couple copies. You can make a little bit of money like that, but obviously the margins are very low because the comic book shop is also trying to make a profit. I tried Indiegogo once, and it was a complete disaster.
What do you mean by a complete disaster? I'm interested in this.
I made 40. I think I maybe got $40 worth of backers on Indiegogo. It was bad. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to get into the difference between Kickstarter and Indiegogo because I know people have really strong feelings about that. I have been selling a few comic books through Diamond. Again, the margins are so small on that. Like the amount of money that it costs to print a comic book and the amount of money that Diamond is willing to give you, there's such a small room for profit. Honestly, my advice would be for people to stick to Kickstarter.
Diamond is poo-poo.
Yeah. That's why everybody's leaving. I work in a comic book store, and I'm seeing it firsthand. Everybody's leaving Diamond.
I did want to just add one thing about this. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. We have 7 comic shops in the city, and I throughout the years have just kind of gotten to know as many of them as I can. Some of them aren't as open to indie books as others, but the ones who are, I've really tried to be a good customer to them, build a relationship, and that's provided me with opportunities to have book signings and shows on Free Comic Book Day. Things like that is huge. I mean, last year we couldn't do it because of my health, but the year before that, I mean, we made a ton of money on Free Comic Book Day because the gracious people at Comic Book World here in Louisville, they just let us set up shop in the middle of the line and Free Comic Book Day, and we got to keep all of the profit. I mean, they didn't, they didn't cut, get a cut. They didn't want to cut. I think we gave them one just because they were being so kind, but it was just, that kind of stuff. If you can build a rapport and a relationship with some of these store owners and be a good customer, and be a good business partner, man, they'll be willing to help you out. And we have found in our experience that that's been crucial.
Yeah,
especially in getting to know people like Jeff. You were talking about kind of starting from the bottom regionally and then going up. That's probably your best way to do it because you're in the comic book store. You've got people who go all the time. If you show up, that's the biggest thing. I think you go to shows, you go to bookstores, anything. If you keep showing up, eventually people will notice you. And sometimes that's the key. Sometimes you're just the guy that's stuck around for 10 years and now people are finally going, oh yeah, this guy, let's see what he has. And I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, I really I like the idea of sponsorships too. I like, for example, just a really small local wrestling promotion was looking for sponsors, and I couldn't make it work financially at the time, but just something like that is something I'd really like to get into, or sponsoring something like that where, not every wrestling fan likes comic books, but
they are tied pretty close together though.
Yeah,
that's
a sizable amount of it.
Yeah,
finding like similar but not the same type of events or stores to sponsor, just put your logo and socials and website and stuff on there. Just that's I haven't been able to do it yet, but that's one of my goals is just to like sponsor something locally like that.
Yeah, that's a great built-in audience. And the Venn diagram of wrestling fans and comic fans is pretty close. Speaking as one who's both. We got a lot more comments here. We got to get up here. First off, Willow Schuyler of Schuyler Productions says, of course, she loves promoting and supporting indie creators, and most of her comic collection is from indie creators. So, there's definitely a great built-in audience for people who really they're kind of out of the big corporation superhero stuff, and they're much more interested in the smaller indie creators, people who kind of push the boundaries a little bit. I definitely hats off to all you gentlemen here. And one thing, of course, since we are doing a fundraiser, we've got to acknowledge one more time that we are here for the Multiverse fundraiser in support of comic books for kids. And Crayle Vanest is giving us some very good news here, saying we are at 61% of our fundraising goal for this year. So
awesome.
There you go. And of course, if you guys, if you haven't been able to donate, or if you're curious about donating, please scroll right down here at the bottom of your screen, facebook.com, Multiverse Fundraiser, or you can go to Comic Books for Kids, cb4k.org, to basically donate there. So, all right. So we're getting close to the end of our panel here. So we got to talk briefly here about favorite artists. If you guys have someone that specifically is an inspiration to you, or someone, basically that's this is who you're doing it for. You saw that person's work, whether it be written or writing or art, and that's where you want to go. Grant, let's start with you.
My all-time favorite artist, not only my favorite comic book artist, but my all-time favorite artist of all time is Bill Sienkiewicz. I don't think there's ever been anybody who just, like, you look at his style and you how do I word this? You can't figure out where the influence is, because it's just like so unique, so out of left field, so like I just never seen anything like it before.
Absolutely. Jeff, your inspiration, sir.
Well, my number one would definitely like if I could meet one person as far as creativity goes throughout time, it would have to be Jack Kirby. I know that's probably a common one, but I mean, you can't, his thing about him is like his art, it's not anatomically correct. It's a little, his scripting was a little rough, but it's just the sheer force of the ideas and the, just anything. Like he would build these worlds where anything was possible. And it's just like, I don't know. He's just the ideas that he would create are just, it makes me want to just, that's kind of, I'm not trying to rip him off, but that's kind of how I want to be, is that I want to create these worlds where anything can happen, magic, technology, sticks and stones, kind of like Thundercats or He-Man back in the day, how like somebody would have a laser gun and somebody would have a sword, that's what appeals to me. I don't know. It's just, I like worlds where you can find anything, if that makes sense. So Jack Kirby is definitely my number one.
Absolutely. Timothy, your inspiration.
Are we talking artists only or is writers?
Either one.
Either one.
Or
yeah.
both.
Artists, man, I'm inspired by so many artists. It'd be hard to even pin one down. But writers, I'm inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien, Grant Morrison, Alan Moore, and I'll pick Pearl Buck and Raymond Carver.
Wow, that's a great list there.
Yeah. Are you a fan of any of those?
I'm a fan of most of those. I'm pretty much familiar with everybody you've mentioned there. Even busting out Pearl Buck there, very nice.
If you are inclined to believe it, that is my number one influence of all time.
Really, that's very interesting. I love that. And
Brian, I know it kind of doesn't make sense. Kind of doesn't make sense for a comic creator, but hey, I want to keep it interesting, right?
I mean, I've always been a fantasy, writer and stuff, when I've worked on things. But one of my biggest influences is Hunter S. Thompson. So,
oh wow, good one.
Yeah. So there you go. And Brian, lastly, your inspiration, sir.
From an artist standpoint, that I just recently posted about having my top 5. But the top 2 are Mike Mignola, and Bruce Timm, who did the Batman the Animated Series in the 90s. That both of those, Bruce Timm's direction and artwork and design really influenced my art style from a very young age. And then Mike Mignola, as I became an adult, just kind of blended with that. So those two mesh together is kind of my art style. And then you get me also somewhere in there. So yeah, those two are brilliant, huge influences for me. As writers are concerned, I would probably say Tolkien and C.S. Lewis are top.
Nice.
And then I would say Brandon Sanderson and H.P. Lovecraft. Also huge influences as well. H.P. Lovecraft writing, not him as a person. just wanna clarify that.
Yeah. Two separate,
very different things. Yes.
I forgot Lucas too. You can't. He's like, I guess the common thing for me is people that just kind of do their own thing, or my George Lucas, Jack Kirby, Akira Toriyama with Dragon Ball and stuff like that. Just do your own thing. It might be wacky, but hey, it's unique. So sorry, I interrupted you, Grant. Sorry about that.
No, I was going to say, I think for me, Mike Mignola has come the closest of all the recent comic book creators to like making his own world where it feels like, the whole, not just Hellboy, but also like BPRD and then all the different spin-offs that are associated with that. To me, he has come the closest to having like the modern day Marvel or DC, where you have like a whole, it's not just one guy, it's not one property with like a couple of smaller ones. It feels like a whole world of different titles and stuff.
Absolutely. And one more thing before we go here, we can't. We'd be remiss to not bring up our partner shops that all helped out in their own ways of promoting or sponsoring the Multiverse fundraiser. So we have to acknowledge, of course, Clobbering Comics, where I'm a proud employee of, Dragonfly Comics and Collectibles, the Collector's Edge Comics, and of course Excalibur Comics, Cards and Games, and Vortex Comics as well. So thank you all very much for helping out with us here, sponsoring and partnering with us. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here today. Grant Lankard, Jeff Beinecke, Brian Rodman, Timothy Fling here. Thank you all so much for being on the panel, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And of course, the links are here in the comments, folks. So if you guys need to check out these gentlemen and their work, you got to support those indie creators out there. That's the most important thing y'all can do here. So thank you guys very much for the tuning in here for this portion of the Multiverse Fundraiser. Stay tuned next because we're going to be dealing with some voice actors. So that's very exciting. Got a lot more panels coming up here. So you all have yourselves a beautiful afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Take care.